Right. So finally, I settled down. And to begin the panel discussion, I would. These guys have been, into the startup ecosystem for a while. They started off with certain technologies. Some of them actually have moved into a product space. So, if you could kind of introduce yourselves in a minute. Your 60 seconds start now.
Hello everyone, I am Jayesh Kitukale. I am founder and CEO of a company called Axonator. It's a startup. We do digital transformation for various companies like, so we are a no-code,
So hi everyone, I'm Abhimanyu. I run a company called as CrelioHealth. We are basically a lab automation company. We build lab information systems, but like SaaS and on cloud. So majority of the healthcare providers today use software and services which are installed and archaic. And there's very little tools available for the healthcare business space, which is like off the shelf, ready to use, like transparent pricing and all that SaaS essentially offers. So we are basically initiating that like first cloud journey for a lot of providers worldwide.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Satish Patil. So we have built a relationship intelligence platform. We help with a lot of enterprises really leverage their huge collective network, which is not typically tracked, discovered by traditional CRMs. We work with a lot of enterprise, especially in the VCP space, enterprise sales, consulting, IT services company, and help them accelerate revenue by tapping into a network which is not visible in front of them, right? Because CRM has only captured 5% of relationship network, but there's a lot of relationships of a bigger organization, customer, vendors, partners, investments, advisors, mentors. We help them organize, contextualize, and tap them for revenue acceleration. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Thank you Ayush for inviting us here. I'm Chetana, Pawar. I have been into IT industry for almost 20 plus years now. I've been to corporates, I've been to startups, I have my own business now. So this is my second startup, I would say. The first startup was into fintech. We were having a SaaS-based payment collection app for micro and small businesses. That got acquired by Dr. Anand Deshpande from Persistent Systems. And I always have believed that technology can solve a lot of problems for businesses. And with that passion, we are now into TechM technologies, helping enterprises digitize their processes using the CRM we are providing and customizing for them. So we are partner to Salesforce and SAP currently. Handling a team of around 80 people on Senapati Bapat Road, and here to share knowledge and gain knowledge. Thank you.
Let me try again. Okay. So I am Jayesh Kitukale. I am CEO and founder of Axonator.com. Axonator is a no-code platform used by enterprises for converting paper forms into mobile apps without coding. The reason I am shaking right now is in 11th standard I was asked to give introduction of the chief guest. Various people were there and I was asked to do the presentation of this kind to introduce them. So, and at that time I froze and I was not able to remember any of the chief guest names. I was probably considered an intelligent person, so they asked me to do that presentation. Give me 2 seconds, okay? Yeah. So I'm taking this opportunity to be here and still be able to talk as much as I can. Please excuse me for this. I told Praveen and I don't include me, but they did. And I saw Aman said that he has stage fear, but he was very good, doing very good, and that made me more fearful actually. So we have this product, right? So we have good traction. Daimler from US, Johns Hopkins University, they are using our product for digital transformation. Our mission is to make digital transformation for the field teams highly accessible and cheaper for everyone. I think I'll close with that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I suddenly remembered my first meeting with him in Starbucks Sound, where we also met. And this is the most that he has spoken since then on a stage arena. So congratulations, you're improving your stage skills. Yeah, so I know Chetana for as long as she has been in the IT industry, because we used to go out and train people on, I used to be on networks, Cisco and Microsoft. She used to train people on Java through a common friend, acquaintance. And then she kind of, took that journey to UK and then came back and set up her own thing. And she started with IT services, and then feeling the need of the market, she actually moved into the product space. So my first question to you would be, I know we've discussed this over a couple of decades now, but what are the challenges when a founder or a startup or a company is actually moving from an IT services space to actually building a product?
Yeah, so the main challenge is the mindset. Services has a different mindset than a product. But what I believe personally, I've done both things. So finally it comes to customer. So customer success is very important, whatever you do, services or product. So for many of the people, mindset is a problem. Second problem is when you are in services, given the service and you forget, you've done your job. But when it comes to product, it is more about the life cycle of the product, and as Mr. Samir said, what happens to the product later. So that is something very important, I would say.
Yeah. Abhimanyu, so we've been connected for some years, and I kind of have seen the journey from you being in a competitor space, engineering-wise, CAP and PACT, and moving directly into a space which is very, very niche, that is a product space. So my question to you would be, how do you find, or how does a founder find the magic beans in his product? How did you know that you're going to target a sector which is based on technology, yes, but the application area is quite different from any of the engineering streams that we know of, which is medtech?
Yes. When I read the topic of the session, and I was like, okay, magic beans is a really high standard. Like, how do you talk about magic beans? But then, so we actually, to give some context, we actually, so me and Mukund, we both started this company right after college, about 8 years back. So on one side, we had some family experience with business. So both of our families are in business, so there is uncertainty in life, and that's kind of, we're used to it. But one of the things, when we decided to start a product company, that too in healthcare, and we are really naive to think that healthcare industry is the same way products adopt in all other industries, the same for healthcare. It's really not. It's extremely different. And we thought we would actually go out and change this space and really digitize the entire ecosystem and so on and so forth. I'm sure there are many who have thought about it. But then there were a couple of fundamental things that we ended up, like in hindsight, doing right. And maybe if I have to talk about like quote unquote magic beans, that it would be that. I think one thing we did, which was very different than I see a lot of companies starting today as well, is we didn't even start product development for a very long time. We were just talking to customers like left, right, and center. Like, we went to so many labs and hospitals, and that too in Pune, because we wanted to go and see what's happening. And it was really important to see what they're saying versus what they're doing, right? It's not always the same. I think we spent about 3 to 4 months on this problem, just identifying what product to build. And actually, even after that, we iterated, like, pretty much they pivoted the entire product in the next 1 year, almost 3 times in that year. We started from scratch because we felt, okay, it was not really solving the problem. And so what we realized that there were a couple of things that in our industry, and I think it applies for most of the industries, is like your user experience when people actually use the product, and especially ease of use to onboard and use. And so we were dealing with a lot of staff that is like not well versed with technology, and to an extent most doctors really just don't want to use any software, and which we understand. So we make it so easy that they forget they're using a software. At least we try to get there. And at the essence, we felt that, okay, we have to make this like extremely easy and intuitive, that there's no training, there is no compliance, exceptional compliance or effort needed to do a particular thing. And I think when we started like eventually getting customer feedback again on, okay, what worked? Why do you like our product? Why do you refer? And the most common thing was, okay, it's really easy to use. I don't need any training. And it was, many a times our sales guys did not understand because we offered a ton of features, and they're like, okay, but most softwares are easy to use. What, do you like this particular feature or that? And I think it was just most of our reviews, even public reviews, just talk about ease of use. And I think it's a big win for healthcare industry in a way. So yeah, that is what I would say changed.
Sure. I'll come to Satish, who has been in the system long enough to know and see the growth of startups and startups into unicorns, as we term it today. The glamorous word unicorns. Those guys going for million and billion dollar fundings and IPOs even now. So there is always this dilemma, especially the guys who are in idea stage or those guys who have read and attended meetups and conferences, if they should be reinventing the wheel or even in their replication of some set standard solution in the market, should they find their own USP, which is more or less similar to?
Yeah, from the USP perspective, see, one, from our product journey, and we also started 3 years ago, there are some folks in this room where I had offered my product as a service. I mean, you were aware of our conversations at Starbucks, right? So rather than the USP, what based on our experience is the perception, right? So the first tip is, being a new in the market, it's very difficult. People believe, so how do you crack that belief system that this works for me? Because nobody has used your product first, right? It's always a post facto. People say, wow, I've used this product, right? So the most important factor what we have seen in the product, as per my experience, is the adoption drives the value. But the real challenge for those guys who are at the idea stage, new stage, is how do you drive the adoption? Because the only way you prove that your product realize the value for the customer is if he or she has used it for X number of months, weeks or years, right? And that is where the real struggle is, right? And second is, especially if your product is in the discoverability phase, majority of the product is in the search phase, right? But how do you convince the product that I will show you something what you don't know, right? So when you don't know what you don't know, you don't start appreciating the product, right? I still wanted to work in the product where I know I can search, right? So something like, how do you search a person which you don't know in the LinkedIn Sales Navigator to pitch, right? So, and that's where if your product in that space, which we typically are, where we say, hey, 90% of your network is invisible to you, and I will help you discover. So because they don't know the 90% of their network, they don't relate that, what that 90% network is, right? And then I have a revenue opportunity and the sales opportunity, right? So in that case, I think something, if you can find out about your product, right, which is related to the other big companies, right? For example, a lot of our customers compare us with Salesforce or HubSpot, and hey, how it is different than LinkedIn Sales Navigator, how it is different than HubSpot, right? And then when we explain, then they realize. But in a 30 seconds or elevator pitch, how do you make that, distinguish, right? And that is where for a lot of products, if you can really create that USP or something, a tagline which is as simple as that, right? Which they can help them distinguish between the other product, I think that goes a long way. But I still feel you need to really crack the perception of a potential customer, right, as a more USP rather than, what the real value is. So.
Jayesh? You have also moved from, IT services kind of a domain to creating a product more or less 3 years back, more than 3 years back now. And great to see acquiring customers in India and overseas. What do you think is, exciting and challenging about creating a B2B SaaS product? Because we've seen this kind of trend over the last few years. The B2B SaaS product space really hottening up.
So, I had been running a IT services company since 2003, and then I moved to a product company only recently, like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a B2B SaaS cloud-based product, so maybe I can answer that question. So the biggest challenge, obviously, is in any product, like others also mentioned, that knowing your customer. I call it KYC. The banks call it KYC, right? So I use that word to talk to my people. Do we have KYC for all these customers that we have right now? So knowing your customer is obviously the biggest challenge as well as the biggest opportunity. Because if you know your customer better than your competitors, then you are the one who is going to lead the market. So especially in B2B, where there are multiple decision makers involved in the buying decision, you want to know each one of these customers very well. And to answer the question, I think that is the biggest challenge, because coming from the technological background, especially myself, I know my product very well. So KYP is taken care of. I know my product very well. But knowing the customers is the key challenge when it comes to B2B SaaS, in my opinion.
Chetana, you've been through that journey. Most of us have a kind of experience from IT service to a product, and then finding the challenges in, as Satish mentioned, finding that magic beans, which would attract the customer. So customer acquisition becomes, especially for tech products, especially from India, where we are not really known for products. We might use Microsoft as a OS or Linux, Unix, etc., all the DBMSs, but there is not really a world-class company from India. So in that competition, they're like, the moment you come up with an app, there are like already existing half a dozen guys in the market. So how did you crack that particular code? How do you, market it so that you acquire customers at probably, a cheaper rate, or, the cost of acquisition?
Yeah. So because we were a small startup, only around 25 people team, so we had to be very lean in terms of efforts and cost, everything. So in my experience, I think startup come with the problem you actually have faced or you have seen somewhere in the market, and that's how you have a startup. And that's how even I started. I looked at a family business who were struggling to automate their processes and customer support and all of those problems, and that's where we started this product. So the main challenge was scaling, right? So if you have a good product which is solving somebody's problem, which is giving them an insight on how the product will help them, what cost it will save for them, or how it will help them to grow. If you can describe these areas to any of the business owner, they understand, okay, you have a good product. And that's how we started. We went very organically. So we started with one industry to start with. We were helping telecom companies collect their payments. So everybody has an internet and broadband at home. Everybody pays around 10 service providers in a month. So we were helping all these service providers to collect their payments. So we started with telecom industry, and referral was a big thing for us. So I think when you are in startup phase, if referral can work for you, you should make most of it. So you don't have to spend a lot. It's a zero cost for you, and referral is something you should go for. We didn't have budget for any digital marketing, so we used to go to events where our customer would come. So for example, in Mumbai, there was an event where all these telecom and network guys will come. Though even we were not guests and we were not invited, we used to stand up at the gate and catch these guys when they come out for lunch. So this is how we started. And once it was pan-India, so the product was used by around 3,000 customers in pan-India. So we started getting referrals a lot. And I think network is another big thing every startup founder should do. So whenever there were events, like Amit had so many events, so I used to literally go around, Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, and meet as many as people. You are the brand ambassador, right? You are the first salesman of your company. So sell as much as you can. And that's how we got all these connects, all these customers. Then we started looking for funds, and that's where I met Anand. So this is the journey every startup goes through. And even in my current organization, I believe in referrals a lot. And if your customer can give you another customer, that's a success story.
So, Abhimanyu, you guys all have created platforms or products in technology spaces using technology, but in different fields. Like, she created her first product was into fintech, which is quite different from what you guys have learned in engineering. Your application was something into the medtech field. So how did you find the drive? Like, okay, there is a requirement, yes, but do you know anything about the processes that are laid out? You want to automate certain processes, but do you know anything in the medical field that kind of goes on? So how did you make that study, that analysis, prepare your own report, and then kind of, jump into it?
I'm maybe biased, but I feel that people can solve other people's problems better, right? Like good product guys can solve other product problems better. And that's how we looked at healthcare. We felt that if people from the domain actually come, they kind of create more complexities than solutions. So we took an approach where it's like, okay, let's go speak to the customer, let's observe, let's identify processes, and let's create a product that we feel would be better. And it does not require all the complexity that, like the 1% would need. But what about the 99% that wouldn't need it? And even today, actually, we look for areas that we can actually remove from the product actively as much as we try to put in the product as well. So I think it creates a more leaner experience for everyone and most people actually starting. So,
Satish, we've been long into the ecosystem for a while now. So what would be your advice to guys who have dreams? Again, coming back to the basics, should they have like a product startup? Should they start building up? Because I have mentored a lot of student entrepreneurs right up in college. So they have those ideas, but is it advisable for them to directly go into a product space, or start building up a service platform, earn something, and then move on to that space?
That's a difficult one, but let me try my best. So when I did my PhD in UM in Minneapolis and I came back, a lot of people were saying, hey, why you are coming back, right? And I had a healthcare analytics background, so I started my first healthcare boutique analytics company on Bane Road in 2010. And I was shouting, do machine learning and do AI, and hardly anybody was listening. Especially, of course, that's a location issue also. Being a Pune, had it been some Bangalore, and at that time the fractals and the mu sigmas were the eyes, especially in the analytics space in the 2010. I was saying, right, and I wanted to start something, but the ecosystem, or the way we are here, right? Immediate, the impulse reaction is start something consulting. Let's help someone, solve the problem, right? And I did the same way. So I started as my first company, which I sold in 2018. But we started as, let's help someone else. So we help right from startup in Pune to all the way Fortune 500, scalable machine learning algorithm, blah, 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 right? But then what you realize quickly is the return to your investments, right? Especially in the product is always high, right? So when you exited, you always wish, we worked so hard for 5-6 years, and you don't get those, multiples which you, wish in the when you look at the exits of other product, right? But the real challenge, especially in India, right? And that's where a lot of people don't, dare, to start immediately. The product is, of course, the capital is the one, right? Do I really? But that's a notional part, right? What I not advise, but what I shared my experience, which we did a mistake, a lot of, right? As I'm sure the other folks are, right? Along their journey is how do you, and always there's a lot of, we hear those buzzwords, product market fit and, all other things, right? But what I feel is if you can, especially those who really wanted to start something, let's get that anchor customer first. I'll give one with, just take 30 seconds more. I was the third gym member of a lady called Rujuta Divekar. How many of you know Rujuta Divekar? Yeah, everybody knows, right? In Matunga in 2000, because I'm from Mumbai, in Matunga she started a gym in Matunga in Ruya College at the basement. I was her third, the membership form, right? And she was my personal trainer at that time because nobody was there, right? Only 4 folks, I was one of them. And then after that I went to PhD and I came back and so I used to talk to her every day in 2006. When I came back in 2010, there are 7 layers, and there are 2 months of waiting period, and still I am not able to, talk to her after so many years after I came back to India. So in 25, she was doing the same advice. She was writing the same nutrition things. What thing changed by the time I came back from US in 2011? The only thing is, she was a personal trainer of
Kareena Kapoor.
Right? And I feel, and even today, when we sell the product in the enterprise sales, what you really need is that anchor customer who gives the validation and the trust in the ecosystem. If this guy is using it, that means the product is legitimate, right? So my advice, let's go build the product, right? But let's get that anchor customer who, break that perception issue and the trust issue and the validation issue is. And then once that is in place, I think a lot of things in place, right? So, but that's my experience.
True. I watched that because, part of things we have done and I have said to, go to market strategies for a lot of startups is this. We've hosted Rujuta Divekar and a lot of other guys because there's founding member of the Pune International Literary Festival. So
I had her personal email, in my Gmail. I still have the conversation with her in 2005. Yeah. I did not delete it, it's still there. I had her visiting card in 2005, still with me. So.
Sure. So Jayesh has given his introductions finally. He's also talked about the product, before we end because our time is up. A short question regarding your customers, because you need to know your customers better than you already know your product, you figured it out. Who is much easier or better to acquire, Indian or US customers?
Of course, the American customers, because they understand, they are more mature in terms of, as a market, US is more mature than India. Getting customers in India is also not very hard, but getting them to pay is much harder. Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, for the sake of time, let's finish this. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so thanks Chetana, Satish, Abhimanyu and Jayesh to be part of the panel. And I think a lot of takeaways from this. I don't know whether we'll have time for another quiz round, but certainly a lot of takeaways for you guys who are noting it down. I observed some guys, actually listening to this one much better. Thanks for being here and thanks for being part of the discussion.